The avoidant maintains throughout the relationship that they do not need you, that they can easily walk away, that their defended position means they are fundamentally unbothered by whether you stay or leave. This presentation of indifference serves the avoidant's defensive structure by ensuring they never appear vulnerable, never acknowledge dependence, never admit that someone has become important enough to them that losing that person would create genuine pain. The avoidant tells themselves and communicates to you through their behavior that you are optional rather than essential, that their defended autonomy matters more than connection with you, that they would feel relief rather than loss if the relationship ended. This defended narrative allows the avoidant to maintain psychological comfort by ensuring they never have to face that they have become attached, never have to acknowledge that someone has penetrated their defenses enough to matter significantly, never have to confront the vulnerability that admitting they want you would require. Yet beneath this defended presentation exists a reality the avoidant's conscious mind cannot acknowledge, but their behavioral patterns reveal with devastating clarity. Certain signs emerge that prove the avoidant wants you not just temporarily, not just when convenient for their defended comfort, but permanently. They want you in ways that contradict everything their defended position claims. Want you with an intensity their emotional unavailability obscures. Want you forever despite their patterns, consistently pushing you away. These signs operate as involuntary betrayals of their defended narrative, as behavioral evidence that exposes an attachment the avoidant cannot consciously admit exists, as proof that beneath their emotional unavailability lives someone who has become profoundly attached to you in ways their defensive structure prevents them from expressing adequately. The avoidant keeps returning no matter how many times you enforce boundaries or create distance, revealing that letting you go permanently is beyond their capacity. Despite their claims of preferring solitude, they compare every subsequent person to you and find them lacking in ways that expose you as a permanent standard against which all others are measured and fail. They cannot imagine their future without you occupying some role in it, cannot plan their life without unconsciously including you in their vision, cannot fantasize about who they want to become without you being part of that becoming. They remember minute details about your life, your preferences, your stories with an accuracy that contradicts their performed indifference and reveals they pay attention with an investment they never verbally acknowledged. These behavioral patterns prove the avoidant wants you forever. Yet this want exists alongside a tragic limitation. The avoidant lacks the capacity to build the forever they desire because forever requires sustained vulnerability, consistent presence, and emotional availability their defensive structure prevents them from providing. They keep returning no matter how many times you create distance. The avoidant demonstrates a pattern across the relationship and after its end where they withdraw in response to intimacy or pressure, yet consistently return after periods of distance, reaching out to restore some level of contact despite having created the distance themselves through their defensive patterns. This cycle of withdrawal and return repeats with such consistency that it reveals something fundamental about the avoidant's attachment to you that contradicts their defended presentation of indifference. The avoidance behavior suggests that while their nervous system requires periodic distance to manage the anxiety that intimacy generates, their attachment to you prevents them from sustaining complete permanent disconnection, even when complete disconnection would align with their defended narrative about preferring autonomy over relationship. You establish boundaries in response to the avoidance patterns, creating distance to protect yourself from the cycle of withdrawal that depletes you. You communicate clearly that you cannot continue accepting their inconsistent availability, that you need space to heal from the relationship, that you are choosing yourself over continued hope for their transformation. These boundaries represent your genuine attempt to move forward, to release someone who cannot meet your needs, to redirect your life away from waiting for someone whose patterns demonstrate they lack capacity for adequate partnership. Yet the avoidant returns despite these clear boundaries, reaching out after you have explicitly stated you need distance, making contact when you have communicated that continued interaction harms you. The pattern intensifies as you strengthen your boundaries in response to their continued returns. Each time the avoidant violates your boundaries by returning, you establish firmer limits, create greater distance, communicate more explicitly that their contact is unwelcome. Yet the avoidant persists in finding ways to reach you through different communication channels when you block their primary means of contact, through mutual friends when you eliminate direct access, through accidental encounters when you attempt to create complete separation. This persistence in returning despite escalating boundaries reveals that the avoidant cannot sustain the complete disconnection. Their defended narrative suggests they prefer that their attachment to you overrides their conscious commitment to maintaining defended autonomy. The returns themselves carry a specific quality that exposes the avoidant's underlying want. The avoidant does not return with casual indifference, reaching out as if no time has passed and no boundaries were established. Instead, the avoidant's returns demonstrate awareness that they are crossing boundaries you established, that their contact may not be welcome, that they are risking rejection by reaching out despite your stated needs for distance. This awareness, combined with their choice to reach out anyway, reveals that their desire for connection with you exceeds their fear of rejection, that maintaining some form of contact with you matters enough to them that they will accept potential rejection or your frustration about boundary violations. The avoidant would not take these risks if you were genuinely optional to them, if they truly felt indifferent about maintaining connection. If their attachment to you was as minimal as their defended presentation suggested during the relationship. The timing of the avoidance returns also reveals the depth of their attachment. The avoidant consistently returns during periods when you appear to be genuinely moving forward, when you demonstrate through visible signs that you are building a satisfying life without them, when you show interest in or begin dating someone new, when you reach milestones or achievements that suggest you are thriving rather than struggling in their absence. This timing indicates the avoidant monitors your life with an investment they never verbally acknowledged, that your well-being and your relationship status occupied their attention in ways that contradict their claimed indifference, that they experience your moving forward as a threat requiring response through their return. The avoidance pattern of returning specifically when you appear to be releasing them reveals that your permanent loss feels intolerable to them, despite their pattern suggesting they would prefer your absence. The content of the avoidance returns when they violate your boundaries further exposes their underlying attachment. The avoidant does not reach out with superficial small talk or with requests for practical assistance that would explain the contact. Instead, the avoidance returns involve references to shared experiences, expressions of missing you or thinking about you, questions about whether you might consider reconciliation, or at minimum maintaining some form of connection. This content demonstrates that the avoidant returns because they want you specifically rather than because they need something practical from you, that their contact serves their desire to maintain some bond with you rather than serving any external purpose, that their attachment to you drives their returns despite your boundaries, making clear that continued contact harms you. The avoidant's inability to sustain permanent disconnection despite your escalating boundaries and despite their own patterns, having created the necessity for those boundaries, proves that their attachment to you exceeds their attachment to their defended position. The avoidant faces a choice between respecting your boundaries and maintaining their defended comfort versus violating your boundaries to restore some connection with you. The avoidant consistently chooses violating your boundaries, demonstrating through revealed preference that connection with you matters more than defended autonomy, that their want of you overrides their usual prioritization of defended position. that you have become so significant to them that permanent loss feels impossible to accept, even when their patterns make that permanent loss the healthiest outcome for both parties. Understanding what the avoidance persistent returns prove requires recognizing that people demonstrate their actual priorities through their behavior under constraint rather than through their verbal claims or their behavior when everything feels easy. The avoidant claims they prefer autonomy, claims they do not need intimate connection, claims they would be relieved by your permanent absence. Yet when faced with the actual prospect of permanent disconnection, when you establish firm boundaries that create that disconnection, the avoidance behavior reveals that they cannot tolerate permanent loss of you, that they will violate your clearly stated boundaries to maintain some form of connection, that their attachment to you is profound enough that respecting your needs for distance feels impossible despite their conscious commitment to defended autonomy. The persistent returns, despite escalating boundaries, prove the avoidant wants you not casually or temporarily, but with an attachment so deep that permanent disconnection remains beyond their capacity to sustain. They compare everyone to you and find them insufficient. The avoidant enters a post-relationship period with the conscious belief that finding someone more compatible will be straightforward, that many people exist who can provide what you provided without requiring the emotional availability you eventually demanded, that you were an adequate but replaceable presence rather than a unique person whose specific qualities created an irreplaceable dynamic. This belief protects the avoidant from confronting the significance of losing you, allows them to minimize what you offered, enables them to maintain that walking away from you was a reasonable choice that will lead to more compatible connection elsewhere. The avoidant expects that subsequent connections will equal or exceed what existed with you, that they will encounter people who provide your patience and understanding without your eventual boundaries, that they will find a relationship that feels easier than the relationship with you became when you stopped accepting their defended limitations. Yet the avoidant's actual experience across subsequent connections directly contradicts these expectations. Each new person the avoidant encounters gets unconsciously measured against the template you established through your specific way of relating to them. The avoidant notices immediately that new people lack your particular emotional intelligence about their defensive patterns. They do not recognize when the avoidant needs space, do not remain steady when the avoidant withdraws, do not interpret the avoidant's defended behaviors with the sophisticated understanding you developed across time spent learning their rhythms. The avoidant finds themselves thinking, "This person does not understand me the way you understood me," revealing that you established a standard for relational understanding that subsequent people cannot meet. The comparison extends to how new people respond to the avoidance patterns. The avoidant discovers that others become hurt or frustrated by the avoidance withdrawal in ways you eventually did, but that you tolerated for far longer before reaching that point. Others establish boundaries more quickly, express needs more directly, refuse to accommodate the avoidance patterns with the patience you demonstrated throughout most of the relationship. The avoidant finds themselves missing your specific capacity to give space without it feeling like abandonment, to maintain presence without it feeling like pressure, to understand their limitations without making those limitations into a project requiring immediate resolution. Each new person's different response highlights, through contrast, what you provided that the avoidant took completely for granted while receiving it. The avoidant also compares new people's individual qualities to your specific combination of traits. They meet someone patient but lacking your emotional depth. They encounter someone understanding but without your capacity for boundaries. They find someone accepting but without your self-respect that eventually led you to choose yourself over continued accommodation. The avoidant begins recognizing that you embodied a rare constellation where multiple valuable qualities coexisted in a single person, that what felt like baseline adequacy while they experienced it was actually an exceptional combination that most people do not possess. The avoidant faces that subsequent people possess some, but never all of the qualities that made you specifically compatible with their defended limitations, while simultaneously refusing to enable those limitations indefinitely. The comparison becomes particularly acute when the avoidant recognizes they are not searching for someone with your general qualities, but rather are searching for you specifically. The avoidant realizes they miss not generic patience or understanding, but your particular way of being patient, your specific manner of understanding the unique relational chemistry that emerged between you. They face that they want to talk to you specifically about experiences they are having, want your specific perspective on decisions they are making, want the particular quality of connection that existed with you rather than wanting an abstract relationship that anyone could provide. This recognition that no one can replace you because replacement assumes interchangeability while you are actually an irreplaceable specific person represents a devastating acknowledgement that the avoidant cannot admit directly. The avoidance comparison pattern also reveals itself through their persistent mental reference to you during experiences with new people. The avoidant thinks, this person is not as quality as you were, or I wish I could share this with you instead, or you would have understood this better. These involuntary mental references expose that you occupy a permanent position in the avoidance psychology as a standard against which all others are measured. That you have become a reference point the avoidant cannot stop using even when they consciously want to move forward. That their mind automatically compares everyone to you because you established a template their psychology cannot override or replace. The comparison extends beyond relational qualities to how the avoidant experiences their own life in the absence of specific people. The avoidant recognizes that achievements feel less meaningful without you to share them with, that difficulties feel more overwhelming without your specific form of support, that daily life feels emptier without your particular presence. The avoidant discovers that subsequent people do not enhance their life in ways you enhanced it. They do not make them laugh as readily, do not provide comfort as effectively, do not create a sense of home or belonging that your presence somehow generated. The avoidant faces that you are not just providing relational functions that others could replicate, but rather were providing something unique to who you are as a person that cannot be found elsewhere. The mounting evidence that everyone suffers by comparison to you forces a recognition the avoidant cannot comfortably acknowledge. You were not replaceable, not adequate, but unremarkable, not one option among many equivalent options. You were a specific person whose particular qualities created a dynamic the avoidant cannot replicate with anyone else, whose absence creates a void no one else can fill, whose significance to them exceeded what their defended presentation acknowledged during the relationship. The avoidant wants you forever because you established a standard no one else can meet, created a template no one else fits, provided something no one else can replicate. The persistent comparison that finds everyone insufficient proves the avoidance attachment to you specifically rather than to an abstract concept of relationship or to general qualities any adequate partner could provide. Understanding what the avoidance constant comparisons prove requires recognizing that people compare new experiences to previous ones when the previous experience sets a standard that subsequent experiences fail to meet. The avoidant would not constantly compare everyone to you if subsequent people provided equivalent or superior connection. The persistent comparison reveals that you set the standard the avoidant psychology holds as a template, that no one else measures up to what you provided, that the avoidant cannot stop using you as a reference point because you became permanently significant in ways that subsequent connections cannot replicate. The comparison pattern proves the avoidant wants you forever because you occupy a permanent position in their psychology as the person they measure everyone against and the person everyone fails to equal. They cannot erase you from their future plans and fantasies. The avoidant attempts consciously to imagine a future without you, to plan a life trajectory that does not include your presence, to envision goals and milestones occurring independent of any connection with you. This conscious attempt to exclude you from their future represents the avoidance effort to align their imagination with their defended narrative that they do not need you, that their life will be better in defended autonomy, that releasing you permanently is both possible and preferable. The avoidant tells themselves they are moving forward, building a new life, creating a future that has no space for someone whose needs exceeded what their defended position could accommodate. The avoidant actively works to imagine this future without you as a way of confirming to themselves that they have genuinely released you, that they are not attached in ways that contradict their defended self-concept. Yet, the avoidant discovers that you occupy their future imagination in ways they cannot consciously control or eliminate. When the avoidant fantasizes about the life they want to build, the career success they hope to achieve, the home they want to create, the experiences they want to have, you appear in these fantasies despite the avoidant's conscious intention to exclude you. The avoidant imagines achieving a professional milestone and unconsciously pictures sharing that achievement with you, imagines your pride and celebration as part of what makes the achievement meaningful. The avoidant fantasizes about travel or adventure and finds you present in the fantasy, imagines experiencing it with you specifically rather than alone or with an abstract future partner. The avoidant envisions a future home and unconsciously imagines your presence in that space, your belongings mixed with theirs, your routines integrated with their daily life. These involuntary inclusions of you in the avoidant's future fantasies reveal that their psychology has incorporated you as a permanent fixture in their life vision, that their imagination cannot construct a satisfying future that does not include you in some capacity, that you have become so significant to their internal world that their mind automatically includes you when generating images of the life they want to build. The avoidant cannot control this imaginative inclusion. They consciously work to exclude you, yet you appear anyway, demonstrating that their attachment to you operates at a level deeper than conscious intention, that their want of you exceeds their defended commitment to autonomy. The avoidant also discovers they cannot imagine major life transitions without picturing you as part of those transitions. When the avoidant thinks about aging, about facing health challenges, about dealing with the loss of parents or other significant figures in their life, they unconsciously imagine you present during those experiences. The avoidant pictures you as the person they would call during a crisis, as support they would rely on during difficulty, as a companion who would be with them through life's inevitable challenges. This automatic casting of you in these future scenarios reveals that the avoidant has internalized you as a secure base, as a person whose presence would make difficult experiences tolerable, as an attachment figure they depend on in their imagination, even when their defended position prevented them from depending on you adequately in reality. The future plans the avoidant makes also betray their attachment through what they avoid planning. The avoidant finds themselves unable to make certain commitments or decisions that would definitively close the door on a potential future with you. They resist fully committing to new relationships because some part of them remains oriented toward potential reconciliation with you. They avoid making geographical moves that would create impossible distance between you. They keep certain options open, not buying a home when they could, not accepting a job in a distant city, not pursuing connections that would develop into serious commitment, because closing these options feels like closing the door on the possibility of eventually restoring connection with you. This pattern of keeping options open reveals the avoidant cannot fully commit to a future without you, because their attachment to you prevents them from accepting that a future with you is permanently impossible. The avoidant's fantasies about their own personal growth and development also consistently include you. When the avoidant imagines becoming a better version of themselves, overcoming their defensive patterns, developing capacity for greater intimacy, becoming the person they believe they could be if they could address their limitations, you occupy a central role in these fantasies. The avoidant imagines that you would witness this transformation, that you would see them becoming the person you always believed they could be, that you would benefit from their developed capacity in ways you could not benefit from their defended state. The avoidant pictures showing you their growth, imagines your recognition of their transformation, fantasizes about you acknowledging that they have finally become capable of providing what you needed. This persistent inclusion of you in their growth fantasies reveals that developing into a better person feels meaningful to them, specifically in the context of being better for you, that their motivation to transform connects directly to winning you back or proving to you that they could have been an adequate partner if they had possessed the capacity during the relationship. The avoidant cannot construct a satisfying vision of their romantic future that does not somehow loop back to you. When they force themselves to imagine being with someone else, building a life with a different partner, creating intimacy with a new person, the fantasy feels hollow or incomplete in ways they cannot articulate, but clearly sense. The avoidant recognizes at some level that imagining a future with someone else requires settling for something less than what existed with you, that no fantasy involving a different person generates the feeling they unconsciously associate with the future they actually want. The avoidant may consciously try to generate enthusiasm about a potential future with someone new, yet find that these forced fantasies lack the emotional resonance that fantasies involving you carry effortlessly and involuntarily.